world in 2017 remains wildly unpredictable. There's a rise in populism, as you would know. There's a rise in fascism, there's a rise in nativism, there's a rise in nationalism. But also the rate of globalization has declined, and the anti-globalization sentiment has grown. A lot of people are talking more about their own countries, about closing their economies. There is a need for an intersection of industry, of companies, of governments, of civil society to try and come up with the kind of solutions that will take us to a new world. Global capitalism needs to be reformed so that social inclusion can be part of it, because social inclusion is actually a prerequisite for growth.
Very few countries really operate on their own. They operate as clusters, as regions, as sort of economic groupings that say, how do we engage with the world and what is our regional story? What is our continental story? It's critical for South Africa to be part of the African dialogue, part of the SADC story, part of contributing to a broader discussion about what is our role in that space. So we had a fantastic dinner with will.i.am, Black Eyed Peas, and the whole theme of the evening was around love and the importance that we're living in an age where closed societies are actually reducing the capacity not just of love between people, but love between nations, love between humanity.
I wonder if the conversation shouldn't be so much about the rise of globalization, whether we should close our respective countries, or whether we should address the issue that's underpinning the globalization debate, which is inequality. Trump arises because inequality in the US grew as much as it grew. And I think when we say that we must close our economies, that's the wrong way to look at it. Because when you close your economies, then what? Then even within your respective economies or countries, inequality increases, and you're still going to have populism within your respective countries. And so I think we need to shift beyond the hysteria and the headlines of whether or not, is it Brexit, it's Trump, and really look at how we're going to create a more equitable world where people don't feel as disempowered, where the economic gap between the haves and the have-nots actually decreases. I think the moment we start looking at the rise of populism or the Trumps of this world from a different lens, which is address inequality and be bullish in addressing it, as bullish as you are in making profit, actually. Because in a world where there's so much inequality and it's so embedded in our society, and the aspiration can be great for people who have structural advantage, because it's easy for you to take advantage of a structural advantage and move up and become middle class, upper middle class.
Yep.
But people on the lower end, no matter how hard they're going to work, they're simply not going to reach the middle class ceiling, whichever way you define it in your respective regions.
What Klaus Schwab, the founder, convener of the forum, mentions is that a big theme was helping leaders find the right compass and radar system to navigate this world, which you say is changing so fast. I think what Davos is also about is asking the right questions.
Yep.
Spot on, right?
I had a fantastic breakfast I attended that was organized by Agility. It was on innovation and artificial intelligence.
We brainstormed some of the themes that came up. Obviously, globalization versus populism, a polarized world. Open versus closed economies, refugees, the issue of energy and power. The duty of a government is really to stay in power, to provide power. I think that was a big theme. Inclusive growth, gender, climate change. But the fourth industrial revolution and artificial intelligence really stood out as a session. What is the applicability to the real issues that we have here?
The intellectual property that goes behind the production of knowledge is actually where the wealth is created. And I think part of the big problem with Africa currently now is that we continue to consume ideas, intellectual property, products, technology, and we're not that strong in the ideation and innovation space.
Given how there's so many different parts of the continent that haven't even picked up on the third industrial revolution. So when you look at internet penetration within the continent, it's still quite low, and calling on our leaders to ensure that we have access to internet. I think the UN had even made access to internet a universal human right. You tend to find that things like data cost then become a huge contentious thing. I mean, in South Africa, we've seen data must fall, but in other parts of the continent, data actually is quite expensive.
So whether it's remote medicine in Rwanda through drones, or it's financial inclusion through something like Bitcoin, I definitely think that the application that are being built globally can be replicated and localized.
Global Shapers community is a community of young leaders from across the world between the ages of 18 and 30. We have hubs all over the world. There are just over 6,000 shapers across the world right now. And we have community projects in our respective communities and essentially looking at what are some of the challenges that we're facing in our respective communities and ensuring that we shape the world that we're essentially living in.
You could be a CEO of a company, but you decided to start an NGO. You decided to build a foundation, or you've had a significant impact in your particular talent. And that could be music, could be film, could be media. And what's particularly powerful about the YGO community is realizing that these are people who are not only serving their original constituency, your job description, your family, but they've actually stepped out beyond their comfort zone to make a big difference. And I think that's what makes the YGO community so particularly powerful. A sense that there are other people out there who care about the world, that capitalism is not necessarily an evil thing, that there's a way to pursue profit and do good. There's a way to marriage, to find a marriage, if you will, between progress and ethical behavior. And all I would say is to just encourage everybody out there that you can change the world through your own sphere of expertise. And I think the sort of demographic dividend or challenge that we have around inequality can actually become opportunities for new markets, new imaginations, and new growth.
One of the things that WEF does very effectively is in broadcasting and making a lot of the panel discussions available online through live streaming, through the social media feeds, and just content that's created. So it's very easy to follow the conversation.
Why is it so hard for Africa to implement? I mean, we have so many forums, conferences, summits, and we talk about all the ideas, and you have Agenda 2030, 20, whatever, but we're not implementing. They're so used to talking about ideas, talking, but that somebody asking, is there something wrong with you that you're unable to implement? We now live in the smartphone era. I've now turned off all my notifications. If you want to reach me, you kind of have to call me. When I'm in a session or in a meeting, I don't even put my phone on the table because that's actually a distraction. You're saying to this person, I'm not present, because when a message pops up, you look at it and you start reading. So little things like that actually affect how present you are in the decisions that you make and how valuable a session with somebody is. So I think I've committed to being more present, and that's like decluttering almost completely. And in the 2 weeks that I've been back, I've seen the difference. I've seen being more engaged in sessions, doing really good work. So some of my best work is done because I switch off. When the phone, I go to bed, I don't sleep with the phone on my bed. And a lot of us do that. And you underplay what that does when you see a message at 1 in the morning and then you wake up mentally.
What's beautiful about the Davos experience is that there really is a blend between art, creativity, cultural production, and hardcore business. And I think the lesson for us as South Africans, when we talk about STEM and how do we get the country moving, is to not forget the power of the creative disciplines to actually be an economic driver of growth. We cannot merely say that to grow it must only be about engineering. We need our musicians, we need our architects, we need our Imagineers, because they're the people who will design and make the amazing technology accessible to ordinary people.
If you are an industrialist and you're looking at the future of work, what kind of workers of the future do you need to create in the context of the fourth industrial revolution? If we talk about STEM, for instance, what must we do in our primary schools today?
Three key sort of phrases that I heard. One was knowledge creation, exposure to ideas, sort of serendipity. And this is something that we'll be taking forward to Durban as well. And in particular, in the context of the fourth industrial revolution, which for the forum is very important. It's about helping leaders to think forward, because it's very easy to be bogged down in what's happening today. But tomorrow comes faster than you know it.